The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the benches, cameras flashing as Jake Paul walked in, calm, composed, dressed in a gray suit. This wasn't one of his flashy boxing entrances or YouTube stunts. Today he was just a man facing the system. Jake was there for a civil case, nothing violent, nothing criminal. But the tension in the air said otherwise. You could feel the judgment, the whispers, the sideways glances. Some people saw him as a troublemaker, others a celebrity trying to play victim. Among the crowd stood Detective Harris, a tall, broad man with years of service, and an attitude to match. He was assigned to courtroom security that morning, but from the moment Jake stepped in, his eyes narrowed with disdain. Maybe he didn't like Jake's fame. Maybe it was jealousy. Or maybe it was something darker. Jake took his seat quietly beside his lawyer. The detective walked past him once, then again. Each time his boots echoed loudly across the courtroom floor, like he was announcing his authority. On the third pass, something shocking happened. As Jake adjusted his seat, Detective Harris brushed past him and kicked Jake's leg hard enough to make him flinch. The sound echoed. For a split second, the room froze. Jake looked up, confused, more hurt by the disrespect than the pain. The detective smirked, whispering something under his breath Jake couldn't quite catch. But the tone was clear. Mockery. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. A few reporters lifted their phones, pretending to check messages while secretly recording. The judge hadn't noticed yet, but everyone else had. Jake's lawyer whispered sharply, "Don't react. Not here." Jake took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and sat still. His silence wasn't weakness, it was control. Inside, his heart raced. He knew millions would hear about this if it got out. But right now he had a choice: respond in anger, or rise above it. And that choice, one in front of a room full of eyes, would change everything that came next. The air inside the courtroom grew heavier after that moment. People pretended to focus on the case, but every pair of eyes kept drifting toward Jake and the detective, standing just a few feet away. Jake tried to keep his expression neutral, though deep down his thoughts were racing. Did he really just do that? In front of everyone? His lawyer leaned closer, whispering, "Don't give him what he wants. You react, you lose control of the story." Jake nodded slowly. He'd learned that lesson the hard way, in boxing, in business, in life. Still, the humiliation stung. It wasn't the kick that bothered him. It was the disrespect behind it. Detective Harris paced the aisle like he owned the place. Every few seconds he glanced at Jake, eyes filled with something sharp and ugly. The kind of look that doesn't just say, "I don't like you," but "I don't believe you belong here." Then, under his breath, the detective muttered, "Typical punk. Thinks fame makes him untouchable." Jake heard it. So did the woman in the second row, who glanced up in disbelief. She whispered to her friend, "Did he just say that?" The judge cleared her throat and continued with the hearing, unaware of the tension brewing. But the energy in the room had shifted. Even the reporters, who came for a simple courtroom update, now sensed a bigger story unfolding right in front of them. Jake adjusted his tie again, a small, steady motion to calm his nerves. His instincts screamed to speak up, to defend himself, but a deeper voice reminded him, "Not now. Let the truth expose itself." Suddenly, the detective stepped closer again, pretending to secure the area. He leaned slightly toward Jake and hissed, "You think people respect you? They laugh at you, kid. I've seen real men. You're just a camera clown." Jake turned slowly, locking eyes with him. "You done?" he said quietly. The detective sneered. "You don't talk to me like that." Before anyone could react, the judge called for a short recess. The gavel hit the desk, bang, and everyone began to stand. Jake's lawyer immediately whispered, "Let's step outside, get some air." As Jake rose, the detective blocked his path for a moment, just long enough to make a point. He smiled, that same smug grin that said, "You're beneath me." Jake didn't say a word. He walked around him and exited the courtroom, his lawyer by his side. But inside, a storm was brewing. Not in Jake, but in the people watching. Several attendees had recorded the entire exchange. A journalist from an independent outlet whispered, "That detective just harassed him, in open court." Another nodded. And on camera, too. Minutes later in the hallway, Jake leaned against the wall, taking a slow breath. His lawyer said quietly, "We'll file a complaint later. For now, stay composed." Jake shook his head. No, I don't want to feed it with anger. I'll handle it the right way. Meanwhile, back inside, the detective laughed with another officer, brushing it off. You saw how he flinched? Guys all bark. He didn't realize half the courtroom had seen, and some had recorded. Within an hour, short clips began popping up online. At first, just whispers. Then hashtags, Keir's courtroom kick, justice for Jake, and abuse of power. The world was watching now. Jake sat quietly, scrolling through his phone, seeing the clips already spreading like wildfire. Millions of people, fans, critics, and even those who disliked him, were furious at what they saw. The video wasn't just about Jake Paul, it was about arrogance, abuse of power, and the way people in authority treat those they look down on. Jake looked up at his lawyer and said softly, "Let's not react. Let's let the truth do the talking." Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, microphones ready. Questions flew like bullets. "Jake, did the detective actually kick you? Do you plan to press charges? Was it racially motivated?" Jake stayed calm. "I respect the system," he said steadily. "I just hope the system respects everyone, equally." His tone wasn't angry. It was powerful, grounded, and full of meaning. And that clip, that one simple line, would soon explode across every news network. Because while the detective laughed, the world was already turning against him. Have you ever seen someone abuse their power like this? Comment below and tell me, which country or city are you watching this story from? When the court reconvened, the energy in the room had shifted. The whispering had stopped, replaced by a strange, heavy silence. Everyone knew about the video now. Everyone had seen the detective's accidental kick. Jake Paul walked back in slowly, expression calm but unreadable. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. He looked centered, focused. His lawyer leaned over and whispered, "It's spreading fast. It's all over social media." Jake nodded quietly. He didn't want a spectacle. He wanted respect, something no amount of fame could buy. Across the room, Detective Harris stood near the door again, arms crossed, jaw tight. He'd seen the phone cameras. He knew people were talking. But he didn't seem scared, only more irritated. When Jake took his seat, the detective muttered loud enough for a few to hear, "Guess fame doesn't make you immune to reality, huh?" Jake looked up at him, steady and silent. His lawyer whispered, "Ignore him." But Jake didn't. Not this time. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the polished courtroom floor. Every eye turned toward him. Even the judge paused mid-sentence. Jake adjusted his jacket and spoke clearly, his voice echoing in the tense room. "Your Honor, I apologize for interrupting. But I need to say something." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Paul, this isn't the time." "With respect, ma'am," Jake interrupted gently, "this is the time. Because this isn't just about me, it's about what's right." The room fell completely silent. Jake turned his head toward Detective Harris, but his voice stayed calm, almost too calm. "I came here today for justice. I didn't expect to be kicked, mocked, or disrespected in a courtroom, a place where everyone should feel safe. I'm not here as a celebrity. I'm here as a man, asking for the same respect anyone else deserves." You could hear a pin drop. The detective shifted uncomfortably. Jake continued. Even critics who had mocked him for years now admitted this was different. Jake Paul wasn't the impulsive loudmouth the world had painted him as. He had evolved. The next day, something unexpected happened. A handwritten letter arrived at Jake's house. No return address, just a single line on the envelope. For Jake. He opened it slowly. Inside was a short message written in shaky handwriting. "You didn't have to forgive me. But you did. I was wrong, and not just in that courtroom, but in life. I lost my job, my name, my pride. But your words made me realize I still have a chance to change. Former Detective Harris." Jake stared at the letter for a long time. No cameras. No audience. Just silence. He folded it carefully and placed it in his desk drawer. That night, he posted a short tweet. "The hardest battles aren't fought in the ring. They're fought inside the heart." Weeks passed, but Jake Paul's act of forgiveness kept echoing around the world. Clips of his speech flooded social media in dozens of languages. Schools, churches, and community leaders began sharing his words to teach empathy and accountability. The hashtag #ThisBeLikeJake turned into more than a trend. It became a movement. People started posting their own stories of letting go, forgiving old enemies, and choosing peace over pride. A teenager in Brazil forgave the bully who humiliated him. A woman in the Philippines posted a video forgiving her boss who wrongfully fired her. A veteran in the US recorded a message saying, "Jake Paul taught me that real strength isn't in fighting, it's in forgiving." Jake watched all of it quietly. He never planned to start a movement. He just wanted to do the right thing. But sometimes one act of humility can ripple across the world. His team suggested turning the momentum into a campaign. "Let's make it official," his manager said. "Start a foundation. Use your platform to help people who've been disrespected or discriminated against." Jake thought for a moment, then nodded. "Not a foundation," he said. "A mission." And just like that, the Respect Project was born. An organization dedicated to promoting fairness, dignity, and emotional strength. It partnered with schools and police departments to create programs teaching respect and equality. The launch video opened with Jake's famous line, "Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength." It instantly went viral again, reaching over 100 million views in the first week. Celebrities, athletes, and even world leaders started quoting him. Even more surprising, a letter arrived from the police chief who had fired Detective Harris. "Your grace has reminded us all that justice must come with compassion. You've done more to restore faith in this system than you realize." Jake smiled softly. He didn't respond publicly. He didn't need to. The message was enough. Months later, at a global youth summit, Jake walked onto the stage as thousands of people cheered. Not for his fame, not for his fights, but for his message. He looked out at the crowd, students, activists, even police officers who had joined the movement, and said, "We all make mistakes. We all fall short. But what defines us isn't what we do when we're angry. It's what we do after." The world doesn't need more hate. It needs more heart. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. But Jake didn't care about the spotlight anymore. He had gone from controversy to compassion, from anger to awareness, from fighting for attention to fighting for change. As the event ended, he stepped off the stage, took a quiet breath, and whispered to himself, This is the real victory." Outside, people chanted his words, "Respect over power, humanity over hate." Jake smiled, not as a celebrity, but as a man who had finally learned what real strength means. And from that day forward, his story wasn't remembered for a courtroom fight. It was remembered as the moment a fighter chose peace and changed the world. If you believe the world needs more kindness and less hate, type respect in the comments and share this story so others remember. True power lies in forgiveness. It went viral instantly. Even news channels picked it up. CNN called it a rare moment of grace in the age of outrage. Fox News labeled it forgiveness over fame. And fans across the world began using the hashtag #BeLikeJake, spreading stories of people choosing empathy over anger. Jake didn't plan any of that. He just wanted peace. But his act of forgiveness had sparked something much bigger. He later told a podcast host, "You can't change the past, but you can stop the cycle." That's where real strength lies. If you believe forgiveness is stronger than hate, type in the comments and tell me what country you're watching from. But the story wasn't finished yet, and because what Jake did next would turn forgiveness into a worldwide movement and change countless lives forever. But just when everyone thought the story was over, Jake's next move would surprise the entire world and show what true forgiveness really looks like. But as the world rallied behind Jake, the detective's past began to resurface, and what came out next would destroy his career forever. But Jake had no idea that the detective's troubles were just beginning, and the truth was about to destroy his career. What Jake did next wasn't out of anger. It was out of strength, and it changed everything. No one could believe what they just saw in open court, and the camera caught everything. "You don't have to like me. You don't have to agree with anything I've done in my past. But nobody deserves to be treated differently because of who they are, what they've done, or where they come from." The judge didn't stop him. She let him speak. People in the crowd started nodding. Some of the journalists lowered their cameras, just listening. Jake wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. His tone carried something stronger: integrity. He looked back at the judge. "I'll follow the court's rules, Your Honor, but I won't stay silent when someone abuses their position to humiliate another human being. I've made mistakes in my life, yes, but this..." He gestured lightly toward the detective. "This is exactly why people stop believing in justice." Detective Harris clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing. "You done?" he said sharply. Jake met his gaze. "Not yet." He took one step closer, not threatening, just steady. "You wear that badge for a reason. It should stand for honor, not hate. If that badge means something to you, then act like it." The courtroom went still. Even the judge seemed taken aback by the calm authority in his words. Then Jake did something unexpected. He turned, faced the entire courtroom and said, "This moment, what's happening right here, is being watched by millions now. You can hide behind your title, or you can show the world what real accountability looks like." The detective's face flushed red. He took a step forward, his hand twitching like he wanted to say something. But the judge's gavel came down hard. "That's enough. Both of you." Jake nodded and sat down. The detective didn't move. He was frozen, a mix of anger and embarrassment written all over his face. The judge took a deep breath, then said firmly, "Detective Harris, I'll be reviewing the incident after this hearing. This courtroom will not tolerate misconduct from anyone, officer or civilian." The detective swallowed hard, his arrogance slipping away for the first time. Jake stayed silent. He didn't smirk. He didn't look satisfied. He simply folded his hands and focused back on the case like a man who had said his truth and didn't need to say it twice. Outside, social media exploded with clips of Jake's calm, powerful speech. People were sharing his words across platforms, calling it one of the most mature moments of his career. Jake had gone viral before, but never like this. This time it wasn't for controversy or spectacle. It was for character. If you were in Jake's place, would you stay calm like this or confront the detective? Be honest, what would you do? Tell me in the comments below. By the next morning, the world had already taken sides. The clip from the courtroom, Jake Paul's calm but fearless stand, was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Every platform was flooded with the same 15-second moment that now defined the entire case. The detective's kick. Jake's silence. And finally his words, "You wear that badge for a reason. It should stand for honor, not hate." It spread like wildfire. Millions of views within hours. By sunrise, it was the #1 trending video in the world. News channels replayed it on loop. Commentators dissected it frame by frame. Some anchors tried to remain neutral, but the truth was undeniable. The video didn't lie. Jake Paul, the internet's favorite troublemaker, had just handled a racist, power-abusing detective with more dignity than anyone expected, and the public loved it. Across social media, fans and even critics came together in rare unity. Tweets read, "Never thought I'd say this, but Jake Paul handled that better than anyone could." That detective needs to lose his badge immediately. Power doesn't give you the right to disrespect people. This is proof. The hashtags were everywhere. Justice for Jake, respect over power, honor the badge. Meanwhile, Detective Harris was waking up to a nightmare. At 6:42 a.m., his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, texts, notifications. His colleagues had seen the video. So had his captain. When he finally opened his messages, the first one read, "Report to headquarters immediately." No uniform. "Internal Affairs wants a word." His stomach sank. He turned on the TV, and there it was. His face, his name. That moment. Over and over again, reporters outside the courthouse were already calling it the kick heard around the world, but the detective's arrogance didn't disappear overnight. He muttered to himself, "He set me up." That punk knew people were recording. He didn't realize the truth yet, that it wasn't a setup. It was exposure. While Harris tried to salvage his pride, Jake was in a very different space. He sat quietly in his living room, scrolling through the comments, overwhelmed by the support. His brother Logan called him, "Bro, the internet's on your side for once." "This is huge." Jake laughed softly. "I'm not celebrating, man. Someone lost their temper. I just don't want it to happen to anyone else." He wasn't smiling for attention. He was reflecting. Reporters camped outside his house. Fans held up signs reading "Respect Jake" and "Justice for All." It wasn't about boxing or YouTube anymore, it was about principle. Even major news outlets picked it up. CNN aired the footage with the headline, "Jake Paul teaches a lesson in restraint after courtroom incident." On the other side of town, Internal Affairs questioned Detective Harris for nearly 2 hours. "Did you physically touch the defendant?" they asked. He hesitated, then said, "I might have bumped him." The kid was blocking the aisle, but they already had the footage. From multiple angles, Detective, one investigator said firmly. "We've seen the video. That was not an accident." The detective's face turned pale. He tried to defend himself, claiming Jake provoked him, but the investigator interrupted sharply. "Mr. Paul didn't say a word before you kicked him. You can't twist this." Back at Jake's house, his lawyer called. "It's official. The department's launched an investigation. You don't have to say anything publicly. The video's speaking louder than any statement." Jake sighed. "Good. I'm not here to ruin someone's life. I just want people to learn from this." But the truth was, the damage was already done. Within 24 hours, the detective's name and photo were plastered across global headlines. His superiors suspended him with pay pending investigation, but the internet had already made its verdict. People began digging into his past, old complaints, previous misconduct reports, and stories that had been buried quietly now resurfaced. It was as if one kick had opened the door to a lifetime of corruption. By evening, protesters had gathered outside the police department. Signs read, "Accountability for all. Badges don't excuse hate." The same detective who once stood tall in uniform now hid behind closed blinds, watching his world crumble. Meanwhile, Jake Paul, the man so many once dismissed as reckless, was trending for a completely different reason: maturity. He had said nothing inflammatory. No angry rants, no interviews for clout, just one quote that everyone was repeating online. "Respect should never depend on your status. It should depend on your humanity." That single line was printed on t-shirts, reposted by influencers, and even quoted by news anchors. And for the first time in years, Jake Paul wasn't just a headline, he was a message. The morning after the protest, the city's news channels opened with the same headline in bold red text: "Detective Harris under investigation for misconduct. Video sparks nationwide outrage." Every second that passed, another piece of his past came to light. Whistleblowers, former defendants, even old coworkers. One by one, people began speaking up. Stories of verbal abuse, profiling, and intimidation that had once been silenced were now flooding the internet. The police department was forced to act quickly. An emergency press conference was announced for 10 a.m. The chief of police, grim-faced and tight-lipped, stood at the podium surrounded by reporters and flashing cameras. Effective immediately, Detective Harris has been placed on unpaid suspension pending a full investigation. We do not condone discriminatory or abusive behavior within our ranks. The announcement hit like a hammer. Outside, a crowd cheered. Hashtags like "Justice for Jake" and "Abuse of Power" and "Accountability" now climbed even higher. Meanwhile, Jake Paul was at home watching the broadcast with quiet disbelief. He hadn't wanted revenge. But now he realized something bigger was happening, something beyond him. His calm response had ignited a movement. His phone buzzed nonstop. Celebrities, athletes, and even activists were reposting his courtroom clip, calling it a lesson in grace under fire. But Jake didn't post a victory tweet. He didn't celebrate. He simply told his brother, "Logan, this isn't about me anymore. It's about everyone who's ever been disrespected and couldn't speak up." Across town, Detective Harris sat in his darkened living room, blinds drawn. The once proud officer who strutted through the courthouse with arrogance now looked defeated, hollow. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, another voicemail. This one from his captain. "You need to cooperate fully. The mayor wants a report by tomorrow. There's nothing we can do to protect you this time." He threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. "One mistake," he muttered bitterly, "and they all turn on me." But deep down he knew it wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. Years of unchecked ego, finally caught in 4K for the world to see. Back in the courthouse, Jake's next hearing was set for that same afternoon. The press lined the steps like vultures. But this time things felt different. When Jake arrived, people clapped. Some held up signs saying, "We stand with Jake." Even a few police officers nodded at him respectfully as he entered. Inside, the tension from before was gone. The courtroom felt lighter, as if truth itself had been waiting for this moment. Detective Harris wasn't there. His seat was empty. A replacement officer stood quietly in the corner, eyes forward, respectful. Jake's lawyer leaned in and whispered, "Word is, Internal Affairs found old misconduct files that were buried. He might be facing charges himself soon." Jake just nodded. He didn't need to smile. Justice was speaking for itself. When the judge entered, she addressed the courtroom with an unusually serious tone. "Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge an incident that occurred in this courtroom days ago. I've reviewed the footage personally. I want to commend Mr. Paul for his composure under provocation. This court stands for fairness, and that applies to everyone regardless of status." Her words carried through the room like a quiet storm. Jake lowered his eyes respectfully, saying nothing. As the session continued, it became clear that his actual legal matter, the one he had been there for all along, was being overshadowed by something much larger. Reporters weren't talking about Jake's case anymore. They were talking about his courage. By evening, clips of the judge's statement were trending. News anchors replayed her quote, "Composure under provocation, a lesson to us all." Jake's inbox filled with interview requests. Brand deals, even offers to speak at universities about accountability and respect. But he turned most of them down. He told his manager, "If I start cashing in on this, it ruins the message. Let it speak for itself." That night, a new video dropped, a compilation made by fans showing Jake's journey from controversy to redemption, ending with his calm courtroom speech. The title read, "The Evolution of Jake Paul, From Fighter to Fighter for Respect." It hit 10 million views in 2 days. Meanwhile, Detective Harris's world collapsed. Internal Affairs confirmed multiple past complaints. 2 former officers testified that he had harassed suspects, used slurs, and falsified reports. The final blow came when the chief of police went live again. Detective Harris has been terminated effective immediately. The department will be reviewing all cases he previously worked on. The clip was short, but it broke the internet. Jake watched it in silence. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply whispered, "Justice always finds its way. If you believe karma never misses its target, drop A in the comments and tell me where you're watching from." The world thought the story was over. The detective had been fired. His reputation destroyed. Jake Paul had been praised, honored, and vindicated, but Jake wasn't satisfied with revenge scoring because deep down, he knew something most people didn't. Winning doesn't always mean someone else has to lose. A week after the firing, Jake sat alone in his studio, scrolling through endless messages of support. The internet was calling him a hero, the calm fighter, the man who humbled hate. But Jake didn't see himself that way. He rewatched the video, the moment the detective kicked him. The anger in the man's eyes, the arrogance, the hate. And then he remembered his own past and the mistakes, the controversies, the times he himself had been the villain. He leaned back in his chair and whispered to himself, "Everyone deserves a chance to change." That's when he made a decision no one expected. He called his publicist and said, "Set up a press conference. But this time it's not about me. It's about him." The news spread fast. Cameras gathered, fans filled the space, and reporters buzzed with curiosity. What could Jake Paul possibly have left to say? When he stepped onto the stage dressed in a simple white shirt and jeans, there was no bravado, no performance, just calm confidence. He took the mic, looked directly into the cameras, and began. "A few weeks ago, I was disrespected, not as a celebrity, but as a human being. A detective abused his power and embarrassed himself in front of the world. And yes, justice was served. But today I want to talk about something bigger than justice, forgiveness." The crowd went silent. Even the reporters stopped typing. "I'm not here to ruin a man's life. I'm here to remind people that hate doesn't heal anything. Only understanding does." He paused, letting that line sink in. "We've all made mistakes. I have. Some of mine are still online for the world to see. But if I can change, so can he. So can anyone." The audience was speechless. Then Jake continued, I don't condone what he did, but I refuse to let this turn into another endless cycle of hate. The moment we start celebrating someone's downfall, even if they deserve it, we lose our humanity. Behind the cameras, Jake's team looked at each other stunned. This wasn't the fiery YouTuber they knew. This was a man transformed. He ended his speech with a final statement. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. Because it takes more power to let go than to strike back. Detective Harris, wherever you are, I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. So that I can move forward in peace. And then he walked off the stage. No applause. Just silence. The kind that comes when people don't know whether to cry, clap, or reflect. Within minutes, the video of Jake's speech hit social media. It exploded. Clips of his line, "Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength," became one of the most shared quotes of the year.